back, everybody, to another edition of 10 Minute Theology. Going to the end times this session. Starting a whole new series on that. Wanted to do an initial one, not just on an introduction to the end times, but is the Israel-Iran war in the Bible? It's definitely in the news. We've seen it the last week or so as we sit here in the end of June, the year 2025. You see a lot of information out there about it, but I wanted to address it from a biblical perspective today, because you hear a lot of info out there from a Bible perspective too, especially if you're out on YouTube, watching different podcasts, listening to different people's messages. We want to make sure you have all the information, know what's going on. So let's go ahead and take a look, and we'll jump into the subject today with the end times. Specifically, is the Iran and Israel war, which is going on, has gone on. I guess there's a ceasefire on right now, as we sit at the end of June again, 2025. But something to consider. There's several conflicts that are mentioned in the Bible in the end times. And so I want to walk through three of those, because there's three major ones that you'll hear about as you go through it. So as we think about this, and specifically what's laid out in Scripture, the Battle of Armageddon, most people have heard of. They may not know exactly what it is. They may not know when it occurs. They may not know where to find it in the Bible, and that's okay. Revelation 16, chapter 16 and chapter 19 speak of the Battle of Armageddon, when it is, but we're going to talk about that from when it is, who are the major players in it. We're going to talk about that for each one of these battles. What are the outcome? Who all's involved? So you'll see that as we go through the presentation, but that's the first one that most people have heard of. Probably the second most common one is the Gog Magog Invasion in Ezekiel 38 and 39. It has to deal with Russia and some other people coming down from the north. We'll talk about that briefly as well. Again, the same type of thing. Who is it? Why are they doing it? Who are the major players? What's the outcome with that? And then one of the least, probably, definitely of these three, the Psalm 83 conflict, Psalm 83 war, whatever you want to call it, is probably the least known. And that's the one right now that you hear people talking about who maybe don't have the best biblical perspective of what the Psalm 83 conflict is all about. But they'll say, hey, that the Iran war that's going, the Iran Israel war that's going on right now in the news is actually the Psalm 83 conflict. So that's one of the things that we want to look at as we march through this today. So before we get into that, it's a good thing to look at and remember the names of ancient lands as recorded in the Bible. So as we look at our current map here, take a look at this. I took this from maps.google.com, give them the kudos for it. They have a nice little mapping system, but you see Turkey up top. We see Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Israel, all the major Middle East players. Iran over to the east. Of course, Saudi Arabia down there to the very bottom of the map. And of course, as you go to the left, you see Egypt. Below Egypt even is the Sudan. All players in Middle East conflicts as we get into these. But it's important to remember that their names of the majority of these are not going to appear like this. In fact, when you look at Syria, Jordan, Iraq, all of these, they really didn't even come into an existence as they exist today until after World War I, World War II. So those two major conflicts really set the boundaries of what's been going on in the Middle East. If you think back to Lawrence of Arabia, both the book and the movie, very long movie, by the way, if you watch that, it really speaks to what's going on with at the end of the World War I with the Ottoman Turks, and where they were trying to get the Arab tribes to rise up and go against them to assist in World War I. So the boundaries as we sit today are not going to be recorded in the Bible, and the majority of the names are not either. Egypt obviously does. Israel obviously does. We even read about Damascus as well. Lebanon is in there too. And some translations will change the names from the tribal names that are used in the Bible to the modern day names. But something to consider, and you say about this, well, wow, they're changing names. What's going on there? Modern day times, at least if you go back and look at a great example is the city of St. Petersburg. So came about around 1703, early 1700s in Russia. Actually named not after Peter the Great, but named after St. Peter. So the Apostle Peter. Interesting, huh? So when you get to 1914, in the middle of the World War I, they changed the name to Petrograd because they said, hey, we don't like the name of this being so close to a German name with Petersburg. They didn't like that, so they changed it to Petrograd. Fast forward to the end of World War I, they changed it to Leningrad, very obviously. Why? They did, right? Because Lenin was on the scene at the time. And then in 91, it got changed back to St. Petersburg. So just an example to show you how, hey, even names of cities today in our modern day times do undergo name changes depending on if they're named after people, after events, whatever it may be. So we see that throughout history, and you go back into ancient antiquity as well, and you'll see the same type of thing. So just keep that in mind. We're not going to go through the process today of showing you the how the ancient names map to the modern names at all. Okay, so I'll actually be presenting the modern day names of these areas, but if you go to the text and look, you'll be going, wow, I just don't see these names. So that's why, and it takes some effort to do that, but there's a lot of scholarly resources out there that talk about it and help you out from there. Okay, so let's talk first about the Battle of Armageddon. Again, one of the most widely known ones out there. When people think of end times, they think Battle of Armageddon. Again, they may not know when it occurs or what it's all about, but they've heard the name, and so they can throw that out there, and they know it's affiliated with biblical end times. So it's discussed again in Revelation chapter 16 and 19 is where that brings up. They're gathering actually at the end of chapter 16. It's discussed about how they go out and gather the troops from the world, all the world powers to come against Christ. Believe it or not, come against Christ. Wow. And then chapter 19 describes what actually occurs when that battle happens. So who attacks? It's the global armies, and they're under the Antichrist. Okay, so that's at least to know who the players are. It's not a regional thing. They go out and gather the global armies to come against Christ. When does it occur? It occurs at the end of the 7-year tribulation period. A lot of people have heard of the tribulation now. If you're a student of the Bible, you know that, hey, it's a 7-year process, with the second 3.5 years through that being called the Great Tribulation. The Battle of Armageddon occurs at the very end of that. Who's the leader of the battle? Well, the Antichrist is. You'll see him referred to as the beast in the book of Revelation as well. So goes out to gathers the army. And actually, if you go and read at the end of chapter 16 about who is actually gathering the global armies of the world, it talks about 3 evil spirits, 3 demonic spirits that come out of the false prophet, the dragon, and the beast. So the beast being the Antichrist, the false prophet, really being a companion to them, and then the dragon actually being referred to as Satan. So 3 evil spirits come out from them and go out into the world to gather the troops. So pretty interesting, the demonic influence that is occurring there. Where does it occur? In the Valley of Megiddo. So the Battle of Armageddon. Armageddon is the Valley of Megiddo in Hebrew. So that's where the term comes from for Armageddon. Why do they do it? They do it to defeat Christ, believe it or not. So they're gathering the world to defeat Christ when Christ returns. And it's really entertaining because why? I mean, just to think that they're going out and they think that they can do that is shocking. But yet, what's the outcome? Christ comes back, destroys the armies. In fact, there's no battle. It says that he destroys them with the sword that comes out of his mouth. So basically speaks a word and they're gone. It's over. The battle is over. Quickest battle probably ever in the history of the world will be resolved by Christ. What happens at the end ushers in the 1,000-year reign of Christ, which is also referred to as the millennium. So it gives you a quick peek of the Battle of Armageddon. Okay. The Gog Magog Invasion, a lot have heard of this as well. It's discussed in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Who's the players here? You've got Russia, you've got Iran, you've got Turkey, Libya, Sudan, and others, okay? And the key word here is Iran is actually referred to in the Bible as Persia. And if you will talk to people today who are Iranian, and I've had friends who are Iranian, they identify themselves as Persian. So they still refer to themselves as Persian today. So there's nothing new or controversial about that at all. It's just not called Iran within the text of the Bible. Russia, of course, is not either. That would be Magog. Interesting study on that, which we'll get to as we progress through our studies on the end times. Turkey, House of Togarmah. In fact, you will still hear Turkey at times referred to as the House of Togarmah. So really nothing there either from a controversial perspective, okay? When does this occur? Well, we're not 100% sure. And there's a lot of debate over when the Gog Magog invasion occurs. probably before the tribulation begins, but after the Psalm 83 battle. Okay, and you say, what's Psalm 83 battle? Well, we're getting to that one next. The key point here is it calls out within the beginning of Ezekiel 38 and 39 is that Israel is dwelling securely in their land. You can make the argument now, are they dwelling securely now? Doesn't feel like it, does it? They're being attacked all the time, missiles being shot at them. A bunch of different countries are involved. Everybody seems to be going against Israel in that region, which is quite fascinating to see it all unfold like this. You're talking a country that's very small. I mean, essentially the size of New Jersey in the U.S. So interesting facts to keep in mind. But that is, we don't know exactly when, but we're fairly confident that it occurs before the Psalm 83. I'm sorry, after the Psalm 83 battle. So who's the leader of the Gog Magog invasion? Well, it's Gog. Who's Gog? Boy, that's a subject for another day. Just know that it's the leader of that attacking force. Where does it occur? In the mountains of Israel, it appears to see. And why does it happen? Well, because it says that they're coming to plunder. They're coming to take the wealth of Israel. In fact, it even shows in the text, if you read down through it in chapter 38, that you have other countries in the world going, what are you all doing? Are you coming to take a plunder? In other words, are you coming to try and take the wealth of Israel? And you say, boy, what wealth do they have? They control a lot of water. And by the way, huge natural gas deposits have been discovered in Israel. So that could be part of it involved as well. What's the outcome? God supernaturally intervenes in this one. You've got earthquakes, hail, troops get confused. There's a massive victory for Israel through this, all at the hand of God. So that's the Gog Magog invasion. Last one, again, the Psalm 83 battle. And this is what you hear some people talking about today, going, hey, this is the Iran-Israel war. It's the Psalm 83 battle. Well, it's discussed in Psalm 83. There's a surprise, right? Who attacks? Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Gaza, Egypt, perhaps northern Saudi Arabia. There's a little debate on that one, but interesting there in the Psalm 83 war that this is what you have. Notice that Persia/Iran is conspicuously missing. So clearly it is not the Iran-Israel war that is going on now. When does it occur? Again, we're not 100% sure. Most conservative scholars say that it occurs before the Gog and Magog invasion. In fact, some would even say that it has occurred already. We'll speak briefly to that here in a couple minutes. Who's the leader of this conflict? Not mentioned at all. So we really have no idea. Where does it occur? Again, it's in Israel, in the mountains it appears. Why? They specifically say they want to annihilate Israel. In fact, a direct quote from Psalm 83, you can go read it, very short psalm, says that they want to wipe them out as a nation. Boy, doesn't that sound familiar with what you hear going on in the news today. So that's another one of the things that people would say. See, they want to wipe them out as a nation. That's why this is the Iran-Israel conflict that's going on today. No, it's not, because as you can see, again, Persia's not mentioned in the people who attack. So you can go read down the list of who is involved here, and Persia's not involved. What's the outcome? Well, the enemies are destroyed. In fact, in the text of the Bible, it even says, let them be humiliated and perish. So you can go read Psalm 83. Again, a quick breeze through, and you'll make it through it. It takes just a few minutes to read, but pretty fascinating text. So what is our conclusion with all of this? Yes, Iran, or Persia, is mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39, okay? But no, the current Israel and Iran conflict is not the Psalm 83 war. In fact, some would even say that the Psalm 83 may have occurred in history already. If you look at the Six-Day War, which occurred in 1967, it was Egypt, Jordan, Syria were leading the charge on that one. Pretty interesting when you look at the players in that conflict. Also, the outcome, Israel took some more land as a result of that. Pretty interesting to look at that and go, hey, could that have been the Psalm 83 war? Maybe. Again, it's difficult to tell, right? But we know for one thing's for sure, it is not the Iran-Israel conflict that's going on today. And we also know that the Gog Magog invasion is yet to come, so that is not it either right now. In that, Persia is just identified as a member of the invading force, with Gog being the leader, Magog being the main group coming down. Magog is probably Russia. And again, we're not going to go into the details of that, but we will in a future episode. So Russia's leading the way with that one. And isn't it interesting that Russia and Iran are somewhat clandestine allies, if you want to put it that way, right? But known to have been working together for quite some time. So it's interesting as you see these world events unfold, that those pieces are kind of falling in place, it looks like. So again, that brings us to the end. Is this the current Israel-Iran war? Is that Psalm 83? Absolutely not. Again, for all the reasons that we mentioned, fascinating study, fascinating information. Just doing the legwork on identifying the countries can be tedious. Go find a good resource out there. If you look in the sources, here at the end is the slides rolled as we fade out with the music. You can see some of the resources I've used as well. There's great ones out there. A lot of YouTube channels as well that are talking about this. Some good solid ones. Prophecy Watchers is a great group that does it. Dr. Bill Salas, again, is a great individual as well, who's done a lot of study on this and written some books also. So I'll leave that to you all to go track down. Hope you have a great week. Take care. Be blessed. Go out there and serve our Lord Jesus Christ, and look forward to talking to you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye now.